to Hindu traditions and pre-Hindu traditions, Jain traditions and Buddhist traditions. And so yoga tends to adapt based on who's practicing it. It is adapted to the beliefs and the needs of the people who take it on. And it's constantly changing. So there is no one expression or right expression of yoga. It is a river of knowledge and ideas and exploration. So another thing that makes yoga a little bit complex is that it was introduced to the West at the end of the colonial period. This was a time of great suffering and pain. So according to the economist Utsa Patnik, $45 trillion were extracted from the Indian economy during that time of colonialism. And we look at the number of lives lost during that time. Scholar Shashi Tharoor, for some folks think this is a conservative estimate, lives lost during British colonialism in India, 35 million. And during this time, people could be killed for practicing yoga, and they were. And in some parts of India, yoga survived entirely underground. So toward the end of the colonial period, yoga emerged as a source of national pride, and in some cases, resistance. And so when there was the opportunity to spread yoga and share yoga throughout the world, there was a great eagerness to show this strength and this beautiful tradition that existed. So as yoga made its way out into the world and it did its thing of evolving in the context in which it landed, it's become a number of different things. But it's something that I always keep in mind and like to share with others as we reap the benefits of yoga. Also where it came from and the sacrifices that were made in order for it to survive this period in time. So, and one more complexity, again, because yoga is so adaptable and it mirrors the culture in which it lands, here in the United States, yoga grew in popularity quite a lot in the 1980s, 1990s, right as neoliberal capitalism was also sort of becoming this dominant way of being here. And so we'll see that in some cases in yoga in the United States, that yoga starts to mirror some of those neoliberal messages. And so if you look out, I don't know if you see some of like the marketing or the messaging that comes with yoga, but it has some pretty strong sort of messages about hyper-individualism and personal growth, and sometimes emphasizing personal growth in a way that cuts people off from thinking about the collective. That became pretty common, but the great news is that there's so many people now that are pushing back against that, and the teachings of yoga themselves offer us a better way, a clearer way forward. And so I'd like to just share a little bit about some of those teachings. And today I'm going to speak about the Yoga Sutras of Batanjali, which some of you may have heard of. And so the Yoga Sutras were written by a sage named Batanjali somewhere around the start of the Common Era. There's some disagreement about exactly when it was, but give or take a couple hundred years around the start of the Common Era. The Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are actually just one of some hundreds of yoga texts from that time, but there's something about the clarity and the simplicity of that text that made it very adaptable and appealing to people, and it withstood the test of time, and it is the most commonly referred to text at this time, and it has also been very influential in how people think about and experience yoga, and that's why I'm bringing this today. And I think just as with any text, the Yoga Sutras have been used for good and also for ill. And I think about it in a way in other sacred or revered texts like the Bible or like the Constitution, that they're not a panacea or a guarantee that people will follow them, but they are a blueprint, and they offer sincere practitioners a blueprint for how we might move forward. And the thing about the blueprint is that it's great if we build it, if we build on it. So in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali outlines this 8-limbed path of yoga. And this contains the yamas, which are often referred to as the ethical codes, the niyamas, which are more of sort of personal codes for transformation. There's the asana, which now it means the movements of the body that most people associate yoga with. At the time, the movement of the body was actually a seat for meditation. So that's been an evolution. It includes pranayama, which is work with the breath, and also several stages of focus and meditation toward actually a union or merging with source. And I would love to talk about all of those, but it would take all day. So today I'm just going to share a little bit about the yamas, the ethical codes, that first limb. There are a lot of interpretations of it. The one that I'm offering comes from a teacher that I've studied with, Susanna Barkataki, coming through her teacher, Shankaracharya, and through the Shankaracharya lineage, which dates back to the 16th century. So the yamas, these ethical codes of yoga, the first one is ahimsa. And ahimsa means non-harming or non-violence. And when we work with ahimsa, it's an invitation to be aware of where harm is happening. And so the invitation is there for us to be in dialogue and with open eyes to where we see harm occurring. Not just where we're causing it, but where we bear witness to it, and also how we might participate in it through the systems and structures that we are a part of. The next one is satya, which means truthfulness or honesty. So satya is an invitation to speak truth, but also to listen to the truths of others. And it's also an invitation to speak truth to power, to say, to name when we see things that aren't being clearly named. And all of that can be incorporated into satya. The next one is Asteya, which means non-stealing or non-covetousness. Asteya asks us the question, how much is enough? How much do I really need? How many resources, material and otherwise, do I need to survive? And it asks us to sort of take a look at the relationship between overconsumption and lack that might occur elsewhere. And there's this idea that we can come into an attitude of living from abundance, not in a kind of, not in a way that overlooks real needs where they exist in our world and in our communities, but it's especially an invitation for us, for those of us who do live in abundance, to kind of release that impulse to hold on and actually share and distribute the resources that all of us need. The next one is Brahmacaria, and Brahmacaria literally means Brahma's chariot. And this is a practice of respecting and honoring life and all life energy. So this asks us to consider what it is that we take into our bodies. That could be on the level of thought or media consumption or food or whatever it is that we take out, and also what it is that we're putting back out into the world in return. It encourages us to respect the energy and the boundaries of others, and also to cultivate love and compassion and kindness and joy. And the last of the yamas is aparigraha, and aparigraha means non-grasping. So this is an invitation to embrace impermanence, which is a hard thing for humans to do. So maybe embracing the idea that we can work toward embracing impermanence and letting go of what no longer serves us and what we no longer need. So this is encouraging us to release our attachment and expectations in this ever-changing world, to let go of beliefs or behaviors, and even systems and institutions that no longer serve our highest good, so that we can open to new ways of being. And if ever there's a time to open to new ways of being, this might be it. So those are the yamas. That's a lot to take in, and it is also a lifelong practice. But when I think of the critical mass of people, if there's a critical mass of people who even attempt to take these into our lives and to work in this way, to be aware of harm, to be willing to speak and listen to others' truths, to be in this question of how much do I really need, to be honoring and respecting life energy and life in general, and to be letting go of what we no longer need. This could be so powerful. It gives me a lot of hope, actually, when I think about the possibility that this practice holds for us. And so in a moment, we're actually going to kind of return to that simplicity of integration and just breathe and move together a little bit. But before we do that, I wanted to offer an example of how the yamas were accessed during another time of turmoil. And this comes from Andrea Jane's book called Selling Yoga. And Andrea Jane is a religious studies professor, I think at Indiana University. So Andrea Jane tells this story about a person named Tulsi, who was an acharya or a spiritual teacher in a Jain sect called Tarapanth. And Tulsi lived during the time of World War II. Since the 1700s, the Tarapanth were a kind of renunciate order. They had a dualist worldview, which was that spirituality was separate from life. And so in order to enhance spiritual growth, they actually turned away from being engaged with the world. There was a quote that was used in that order, that they were turning away from the, quote, vomit of worldly affairs to pursue their spiritual development. But when Tulsi looked out on the world during this time of World War II, and he saw the suffering and the ravages of war, and he saw what he called the moral issues surrounding this time of industrialization, he basically did a 180 and he changed course entirely. And what he did was he started this movement called the Anagrap Movement, or the Lesser Vows Movement, that was intended for all people, Jain and non-Jain alike. And what the lesser vows are ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha. It's another name for the yamas. And so what he did at that time, when it was so crucial that people step up and create change in the world, that he used the yamas to take what was a kind of a world denying order and turned it into a social movement. And so here we are in some ways in a kind of a parallel movement of unrest and a painful movement in terms of our own democracy as well. This is a time when millions of people are practicing yoga. So again, I like to imagine like what could happen if some of those folks who are practicing yoga for their own personal enrichment also incorporated these ideas of how we engage with others. And brought those into their yoga practice as well. So that's something that I like to encourage in my own classes and in my own life, and just share that idea with you as well. So with that, we're going to try a little bit of yoga, and I'm going to move over to that chair, and so just give me one moment to get settled. Great, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. I was thinking this morning, I've taught a lot of chair yoga, but I've never taught pew yoga before. So hopefully it works where you're sitting here. So as we begin this, as I said before, you can simply watch and listen. You can take part. These practices are things that generally work for many people a lot of the time. That is to say, if I'm doing something and you don't feel like doing it, or it doesn't seem like it's going to work for you, you can just let it go and just follow what you know about your own body. So we're going to start just by finding what is a comfortable seat for you. If it's possible to kind of feel a sense of length as you sit, that's great. If you need to lean back, that's fine as well. But as much as you can find a bit of uprightness in your spine. And as you do that and let your awareness move inward and into this moment, let's just take a few moments to meet what is here for you right now on any level. If there's anything that resonated about yoga or the yamas, you might be aware of that. So just bringing your awareness now to your connection with the ground, your connection with the earth. You might feel your feet, connection with the earth there and whatever you're sitting on. And if it's comfortable for you to do so, we'll start to notice the breath and just how your breath is flowing right now. You might be aware of the actual air entering, filling the lungs from the top down, and then rising back up again and out on the exhale. And as you explore this, you might also be aware of the movement of the breath through the whole torso or even beyond. So take a little bit of time just to feel and notice how your breath is moving right now. Once you do, see if you can broaden your awareness a little bit to take in the sensations in the body, whatever those might be. And encourage your body to soften, letting go of any extra effort or tension that you might notice if you can. We'll take this connection to body and breath into a little bit of movement if you like. We're just going to start with a very tiny head circle. Like you had a pen tip on the top of your head and you're drawing so a little circle on the ceiling. Just small and steady, and encourage your jaw to soften, face to soften. Circle in the other direction. Can you be aware of the steadiness of the circle and also noticing the movement of your breath? As you bring your head back to center, feel the earth beneath you. And you want to imagine a sense of rise through the spine, right out through the crown. So not a rigid rise, but as easeful as you can. And encourage the shoulders, the tops of shoulders to soften. So do a little circling of the shoulders. Now, and you can play with this. You could do one and then the other, both together. You can try different directions. Just any kind of movement that's interesting to you. See if you can feel the sensations of that movement. And be aware of the flow of your breath. And then let the arms and the shoulder blades come to rest. We're going to do a little wrist circle here by interlacing the fingers, and your palms can be touching or a little farther away depending on what you like. Let's just circle the hands here. And let your awareness move right into those hands, those wrists, and just feeling little internal movements, any sensations. We'll circle other direction. All of these things can be any size, especially if you're working with some sensitivity. Maybe you make it very small, even barely perceptible. It's different in terms of the physical impact, but actually these subtler movements sometimes have a greater impact when it comes to the practice of integration. So less is more a lot of the time. And then let's release the arms. And as you do, just take in a breath and let it go. And we're just going to move the spine a little bit now. And this is whatever works for your body. You can large or small, you can sway or circle. And as you're moving the spine, come back to that sense of awareness of the earth beneath you. And bring yourself back to what feels like a center place, a middle place for you. And we're going to take the hands and rest them on your lap or wherever it makes sense for you to rest the tops of your hands so the palms are facing upward. We're going to do a really simple thing, which is to slowly lift the hands up. And if you can, touch the fronts of your shoulders, and then slowly, steadily bring the hands back down and let them land wherever you started. And so I'm just kind of repeat that movement. Pouring your awareness inward. And then at some point, the invitation is here to let this movement follow your breath. And the suggestion I'll make, and you can do anything, but this suggestion I'll make is to follow your inhale as your arms come up to touch the front of your shoulders. And your exhale as your hands come down. So your breath is the leader. And the arms follow. And if this movement doesn't work, you can make up one that works for you. Let's do a couple more of them. And then next time your hands are coming down, let them rest and actually feel the weight of your hands, your arm bones, just settling into that support. See if you can soften the top of your shoulders, the upper arm as well. And again, take in a breath here and let it go. Now we're going to take your left hand to the front or the top of the shoulder and see if it feels okay to you to take just a little lean over to your right. And you could bring your right hand down to the pew or to a chair if you've got one. Just taking a nice full breath here. As you let the breath go, we'll come back to the center. And then switch hands so you can bring your right hand up. And then take a little lean to your left and just use that left hand however you'd like to support you. Offer your full awareness to the sensations that are here. Come on back, letting the arms rest. We're going to do a little bit of a twist. This might be a little bit hard there if you're in the pew, if it's right behind you, but it could just even be looking a little to your right. But if you can, let your spine rotate just a little bit, arms land where they land. Take in a full breath here. And let it go as you look forward and back to center. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side. So depending on what feels good to you, maybe just your head or a little twist. Now take a breath. And let it go here as you come back to center. And I'm just going to come back into maybe a little bit of moving through the spine. And then let that turn into whatever you feel like doing right now. So if you want to just give a little stretch, or even if you feel like standing up, you could come up in your seat if you want to. So this is a time to really let your body just guide you in whatever would feel good. And so you can sitting or standing, make a little bit of movement here. And this is our time to really tune in to what do you need right now? What feels right. And throughout it, just taking in as well this awareness of how your breath is flowing. And we'll do it for another 6 or 7 rounds of breath, so a little bit of time, movement or stillness. And you can keep going as long as you want to. We can eventually, we'll kind of meet together back in a quiet seat. So that can happen on your own time. And as you eventually make your way into some place where you would like to land for right now, Turn the awareness back in. You can have a soft gaze or even closed eyes. Take a moment to just be with what is here now, whatever it is that you are noticing. Feel the movement of your breath and the sensations now. We're just going to take a minute or so in this moment of quiet contemplation or meditation, simply to be present, to listen, to inhabit fully this moment in this space, wherever you're at. To breathe. Do a couple more rounds of breath here. So prepare to turn your awareness back out and into the room. You might make a little bit of movement. If your eyes were closed, you can open them. I'd like to just conclude as I conclude all of my yoga practices, which is to offer gratitude for this practice of yoga and to remember all of the teachers and students who come before us. Thank you all very much. Got my glasses.
Every week at our church, we take up an offering, which gives us an opportunity to exercise the generosity of spirit that supports All Souls and its many ministries. We see this act of giving, of growing more generous in our hearts and our actions as essential to our spiritual well-being. As Julia plays Bach, we will receive the morning's offering. Individually and together, we are building a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. Each one of you, by your commitment of time, talent, and treasure, helps make this grand vision real.
All right. So today I'd also like to share a little bit about the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. And I'm speaking about the PPC here not as the answer to yoga in action as they sort of connect these threads, but my approach of bringing the practices of yoga and ethics to life. The Poor People's Campaign is a moral fusion movement. It has a focus on truth, a focus on bringing people together, a focus on addressing and naming the root causes of injustice. And for me, this immediately resonated. As soon as I heard about it a couple of years ago, I knew that that I really wanted and needed to be involved. And I know that the Poor People's Campaign is familiar to many of you because there was a big event here just 2 years ago in this room. And that was in preparation for March on Washington that had to be canceled due to COVID. Well, not canceled, actually. There was a wonderful online event, which millions of people participated in. So it was quite amazing. But the in-person did have to be canceled. And the great news is that it's happening this year. We're going to be in DC on June 18th. So I'm hoping that a lot of folks from this region, there are many of us now working together to reconnect folks with Poor People's Campaign here. And we're hoping that some of you will come down to DC with us on June 18th. So I'm also sharing about the Poor People's Campaign as someone who has experienced poverty. And I was a single mom for 10 years. And during that time, my son and I lived in 10 different homes in what felt like basically an impossible quest to find safe and affordable housing here in this region. And I got pretty creative during that time. Like I would sort of plan my meals, like I would just skip meals if he wasn't home, or like make sure that the house was cold when he wasn't home, or even figure out how to use power tools and cut up old bits of furniture for firewood. And it was like that for a while. And for me, the feeling that I had during that time experiencing poverty in this community was invisibility. And a lot of folks who really cared about me also gave me this advice of like, don't let anyone know what you're going through, keep it quiet. And as well-meaning as that was, that those folks were kind of reacting to the stigma around poverty and bowing to it. And so when I heard about Poor People's Campaign and this practice that we have of saying absolutely not to this idea of blaming people who are poor for poverty rather than the systems that cause poverty. Again, it deeply resonated for me, and I could see the power of it and also the necessity of it. So the Poor People's Campaign, as many of you might know, began with Dr. King in 1968. It was his last political project. It was very controversial at that time and extremely threatening as well to the powers that be. But he understood at that time that we all need to work together to create change. And so he was looking at the intersection of racism, poverty, and militarism during that early campaign. So in 2018, the Poor People's Campaign was revived and is now led by co-chairs Reverend Dr. William Barber and Reverend Dr. Liz Theo-Harris, who was here in this room a couple of years ago. So the Poor People's Campaign addresses what we call the 5 interlocking injustices of systemic racism, poverty, ecological devastation, militarism in the war economy, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism. And we do this in 3 primary ways. One is by building power, by bringing people together across lines of division and uplifting the voices of people who are most impacted by these injustices. We do it by shifting the moral and political narrative, as I mentioned before, naming the true causes of poverty and oppression rather than blaming people who are experiencing poverty. And we do this by advocating for real policies to fully address poverty from the bottom up. So the Poor People's Campaign platform has an agenda that's rooted in the needs and the priorities and the demands of the 140 million poor and low wealth people here in the United States, as well as our deepest constitutional and moral values. And there's a whole lot more that I could share about the Poor People's Campaign, but it would take a little bit of time to go through what the platform looks like. So instead, I'm just going to share a poorpeoplescampaign.org, and I encourage anyone who's interested to go and check that out. And you can learn a lot about what's happening and also how this movement is woven together. As well as there are, I think, right now 200 national organizations that are partner organizations, and many organizations here, even in Franklin County, that are coming together. Because here at this time, we know that we're in a time, a very critical time with voting suppression, with militarism, with the climate crisis. And again, it's clear that if we're going to make change, we really need to work together and come together. So I'll be available after if anyone wants to get some more information about that. I have a sign out sheet for Poor People's Campaign if you want to get connected with us. But this is a time, as I had said, where momentum is building here in Franklin County, in Western Massachusetts, in Massachusetts, and actually across the nation, where we want to converge and put our voices all together, because we do have the numbers to make change if we work together. And that's our goal on June 18th. So thank you again, and great to be here with you all.
Thank you, Kate. Now is the time in our service for sharing joys and sorrows. If you have a sorrow that needs the help of this community to carry it, or a joy so great you must share it, now is the time. You may share with the congregation. We'll bring a mic to you. Or if you're on Zoom, you can put it in the chat and we can catch you there. If you are sharing with the congregation, please note that this is not the time for announcements. We care for each other by being true to the purpose of this time. So be succinct. And obviously we don't have coffee hour downstairs. So also there'll be opportunity, hopefully after the service, to chat. It is a very great honor that we have visitors to All Souls. And so this might be a time you might want to stand up and introduce yourself. While this isn't required, we would love to have the opportunity to welcome you. So now is the time for welcoming visitors and sharing joys and concerns.
Hi, good morning. My name is Rob, and it's so wonderful to be back in this building. Thank you to the Kate and Kate show for this morning. And I have two things: a candle of sorrow. My lifelong friend, been my friend for over 60 years. Gary has been struggling with COVID. I'm really hoping he's about to turn a corner. And I also want to light a candle of joy and gratitude. The joy is another dear friend whose birthday happens to be today. And gratitude to a woman in a program. I got asked to do a virtual keynote. I had no idea how I was going to juggle in a virtual keynote, but she really went the extra mile, found all kinds of YouTube links and made it work. So this is in gratitude to Sheila for all of her technical assistance.
Morning, my name is Russ, and this is a personal concern. I'm diabetic. I have been for a number of years. I just saw my doctor week or so ago. And treating this requires more time and energy on my part, and change in the technology. And while I'm doing it, it feels somewhat overwhelming and frightening, and it's taking up a bigger place in my life and my head. I'm making progress, but still, thank you for letting me share this.
This is I'd like you to light a candle of sorrow for my dear uncle who died this week, and also for a classmate of mine who died this week. So I'm feeling a little bit of sorrow today, and thank you.
I just like to light a candle of celebration. It's spring. I brought the forsythia and tulips, and I'm just so happy to be together and celebrating spring.
I'd like to light a candle for Lori Bilyeu, who just had her left knee replaced and is dealing with the after effects and all the therapy you have to go through for that, but she seems to be doing well.
I'd like to light a candle for all the families in Ukraine and Russia who are grieving now the loss of their family members.
Hi, I'm Kim. I've seen lots of you online. It's nice to see you in person, but it's also very anxiety provoking for me. So if I jump back from you, it's just self-protective, but I am happy to be here.
Do you want to check if there's any on Zoom? Zoom candles? Also, I meant to invite people to light candles over there if they just wanted to light one silently in their own hearts.
All right. I don't see anybody online who's waving their hand or sent anything in the chat. So.
Spirited community in which we share and find strength and common purpose. We turn our minds and hearts toward one another, seeking to hold in our hearts all our joys and sorrows, both spoken and unspoken. Let us open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain, and of the soft, gentle coming of love. Amen. I don't think we're going to do prayer to friends right now. Music. Let's hear prayer to friends. Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness of tomorrow. Today is the seed time. Now are the hours of work, and tomorrow comes the harvest and the playtime. Go in peace.
Hi, everybody.
Hiya, Dan.
Hi, Gary. Lori, I hope there wasn't too much visual information in that one for you, but I think there was enough audio stuff going on that it worked. I hope so. Huh? Oh, thank you. So as I said in the chat, next week it'll be just Zoom. because the presenter is going to be on Zoom. And then after that, we hope that we'll be able to have this kind of hybrid service afterwards. I apologize, I lost 2 cameras during the shoot, so we didn't have them. Hi, Rocky.
Where'd they go?
Well, one failed to sync. The one that I have a close-up on the piano that I set up last, and I think it didn't have, there's a thing about the video frame rate that it didn't do. So that's probably the issue.
It's fine. I was just,
Yeah. And the other one, the other camera, it ran out of battery because we took too long and I didn't have an auxiliary power supply set up. Anyway, we hope to see you next week. And so long to anybody who's on YouTube. But thank you for sticking with us.
thanks
Peace
for
be with you.
continuing to have the virtual option available.
Yeah, we will. I think this is a permanent thing. In fact, we'll probably build something into the church so I don't have to drag everything in at 9 o'clock in the morning. So
That'd be nice.